So we had a bunch of questions here, but we just want you to give us like a little background on how you conceived the idea and how did you end up in real estate. How was this starting?
How would you like to start off with the word, it was a mistake?
Perfect.
I was working at NC State in the athletic department raising money for a Wolfpack Club. And I saw all these fellas with huge wealth. And I came from a poor background. I came from lower middle income. I grew up in Philadelphia. My father worked for the railroad. And I lived in today is the in thing, a row home. They're now called townhomes. Mm-hmm. But if you didn't know your address in Philadelphia, you'd probably go to the wrong address and knock on the wrong door. Because every house was exactly the same. I lived in Northeast Philadelphia. If you ever heard of LaSalle College, LaSalle University in Philadelphia, I lived not too far from there. Fortunately, growing up, I went to LaSalle High School, which is a private Catholic school. And not having gone to public school, I think I got a little advantage due to being an athlete. My athletic background brought me a lot of advantages that other people couldn't get. I came to NC State on a swimming scholarship. I was very good in high school. I was much better in college. And due to that, I also ended up at one out, just so you know. Along with my athletic scholarship, I also was selected to represent the Monogram Club to the Athletic Council. So therefore, I was the athlete on campus representing all the athletes on whatever affairs on campus. So having that leadership role put me in a position where I got to know a lot of people. My senior year, my fifth year, I was a slow learner, so I took 5 years. Okay. So I went to college to become an athletic director. I studied recreation and parks administration with a major in sports management, and I wanted to be an athletic director. After I graduated from state, I went in the Army for 2 years. And when you go in the Army, a lot of things changes with people shooting at you. So I got very fortunate there due to my sports background also, and ended up in an athletic department, very safe and sound in the Army. When I got out of the Army, my swimming coach hired me. He had become the athletic director, and he hired me to work at the Wolfpack Club. When I came to work at the Wolfpack Club, my first job, my first week, we were building what's called the Everett Case Athletic Center next to the Reynolds Coliseum.
Right.
And Willis Casey, the athletic director, had nobody, including me, with any experience of building anything in the athletic department. But he said, Pat, one of your jobs in addition to fundraising is going to be helping to construction manage this building. So for the next year and a half, as part of my job, I learned a little bit about construction and making sure people were doing their job properly, doing budgets, etc. Well, it was sort of intriguing to me. It was my first shot at doing anything like that. And managing contractors, subcontractors. A lot of what Michael's doing today was what I did for a year and a half, finishing up maybe closer to 2 years, in addition to going out raising money all over the state. And during that time, I'd see people with huge amounts of wealth, and I'd say, I can do just as well as this. So I've always had a way of being able to lead people, deal with people, I've always felt comfortable in that position, both as an athlete, as a coach for a year. During my senior year, I also went out and represented the Wolfpack Club as a student athlete to the university, going out to meetings. In the Army, I took a leadership position in the Army. So in the mid-70s, I said to myself, am I going to be doing this all my life as a salary? Or am I going to step up and maybe become better than this? My father had a regular job. I'm 35 years old at the time, and I'm thinking, what happens to Pat? Do I stay with athletics, or do I move on? So I started making plans, and I joined a guy from Atlanta, and I didn't like the way he was doing business. And everything I was learning from him, I figured if I did everything the opposite of him, I'd be pretty damn good. So we jointly had bought a property, several properties, one large property, 300 acres, and several other properties from Gastonia, North Carolina, York, South Carolina, Greenville, Greenwood, South Carolina, Columbia, Lexington County, South Carolina. And one of them was significantly large. And my investor from Hong Kong that's still with me today bought into the one in Columbia, which is the one I'd like to give you an example of. They all come together at some point, but that was a significantly large investment for me at that time. $10,000 to me was a lot of money.
Right. Do you want to talk about Vincent a little bit beforehand?
Sure.
Yeah.
Vincent was a fellow that went to NC State, College of Textiles. His father was the master of Chinese textiles in Shanghai. He was the big dog in Shanghai. Mr. Fang had the foresight when Mao took over to move from Shanghai to Hong Kong. And he bought container ships and moved his family and all the other textile magnates to Hong Kong. So everybody owed Mr. Fang. His four sons all went to college in the States. Two of them went to NC State, one went to Michigan, one went to Wisconsin. Vincent is the third of four. Larry is the second. I knew Larry in school. I didn't know Vincent. But Vincent used to come to my swimming meets. In 1979, I had left the Wolfpack Club and I went to Hong Kong with two guys from the Canton who invested a little bit of money with me early, before I went to Hong Kong, in smaller deals. The Yang family here in Raleigh, their family owned Hong Kong, was part owner of Hong Kong Tobacco Company and a paper company that made the cartons for tobacco, for cigarettes. So the older brother, Jack, was in charge. So Kimmy wanted me to meet Jack and meet this fellow, Vincent, who they grew up with. So I went to Hong Kong and I laid out a plan that I'd like to buy some property. They actually wanted to do investments more in Raleigh. Well, I didn't buy in Raleigh early on. I should have, but I didn't. I didn't start buying here till early 80s, mid 80s, which I'll get into. But Vincent and Kimmy being from Raleigh, Vincent going to school here in Raleigh, he was here undergraduate and graduate school. They liked the idea of Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill with all three schools that they didn't think this area could miss. It would grow and grow the way it should grow, which it has. And it's proved very well for all of us. So Vincent invested several $100,000. My recollection is about $400,000 in this project in Columbia, South Carolina. We borrowed $1.6 million, thereabouts. And we bought this land, about 325 acres, not too far from the Columbia Airport. And no sooner did we buy it in 1980, and interest rates started ratcheting up from 8, 9% all the way to 22, 23%. Well, we had been selling land on 1 acre sites, would run a road in, put a water line in, and sell 1 acre sites. And most of those people who bought would buy a Jim Walters manufactured home. And they put it on the land and pay us off. They'd finance it and then pay us off. Well, I had a bank loan. So when we got the cash, we'd automatically have to pay the bank. Okay? When interest rates got to 15, 17, 19, 20, 23%, nobody was buying any land. BB&T calls me and says, "We want your $1.6 million. And we want it now." So I called my friend Vincent one night about 11 o'clock at night, 12 hours difference, Hong Kong. I get on a plane and go see him. Scared to death. I'm thinking, oh my God, here I go, bankrupt, PK. And I'm going to go try to find another job back at the Wolfpack Club.
Pat, can I interrupt you real quick? Because I think I'm lucky because I know the story. How much of this, there's a lot of this story left. Some questions that we're going to have quickly are, Vincent put in about $400K up front. Did you or Pete Bailey have any, or I should say,
no cash.
No, so
it was a 50-50 deal.
Okay.
He put up the money, we did the work.
So we just had a class where we went through how sometimes you don't necessarily put equity up, but you're partnered in like a general partnership, limited partnership, and you know you might have the developer be the general, and the guys with money would be limited, but it doesn't matter about the partnership.
It was a general partnership, limited partnership relationship. The general partners were Pete and me at 25-25, and Vincent was 50% for his cash.
Okay.
The note got called due. So I go to Hong Kong and I said, it's either lights out on this project and lights out for me, or here's what my solution, my objective would be here. Are you able to, can you pay off the loan? He agreed to pay off the loan. He also agreed to put up money for infrastructure for the second phase, because we had like 310 lots, 315, 320 lots. And we had only gone through, I don't know, 50 or 60. So he says, you need money for the next phase. You need money for your own business. Yeah, you're going to make commissions on sales, but you're not going to have enough to pay your overhead, the guys doing the sales. So he put up $500,000 for infrastructure and put $500,000 more up for Keystone for overhead to carry the company. And we started selling lots on, depending on how much down, if it was a $20,000 lot or a $25,000 lot, if it was $1,000 down, $10,000 down, the more they put down, the lower the interest rate. The higher the less they put down, the higher the interest rate. The less they put down, the longer the term. Some of the terms went out 25 years. We were still receiving money on this project as recently as 2009. Some people still paying off at 15, 18, 20%. I mean, they were doing reverse amortizations.
Add to the principal.
Add to the principal. It was incredible.
But the point was you were making a deal so that a builder didn't have to put up all that money or borrow all that money from a bank at some outrageous interest rate. Instead,
the highest order interest rates were about 17 or 18%. The lowest were about 9 or 10, depending on how high the deposit they put.
So that they could put up a few $1,000, come in and get a loan from you
and
at
pay
12% or something.
And it paid every month. And then when they got enough money together, they go buy their Jim Walter home, refinance the land and the house, put the house on the lot, out of here.
Yeah, pay you off.
Pay us off. So that's how that worked.
So for the amount that Vincent put in, like you said, $1 million, or did he pay off the whole $1.6 million?
He paid off the whole 1.6.
So did he ask for more stake?
Actually, I couldn't buy Pete, this guy from Atlanta. I couldn't buy him out. He wouldn't agree. So I had my lawyers just say, you know, Pat, he's got deals with you over here in Alabama and Georgia. Forget the lawyer fees. Just don't pay him anything. So I took the 25% and gave it to Vincent. It wasn't what you call legal. It's what I had to do because he took mine.
He had a claim to it, but it didn't go.
It was a swap.
Okay.
without a legal swap.
So
Otherwise, we're going to get years of hassle and legal fees. He didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. So we just
agreed to cut ties.
But you did essentially dissolve the relationship without
official papers.
Without official papers, but he didn't have any equity in, so he wasn't
That's
losing.
Right. He didn't lose any.
He was losing the upside, but he saw probably a tough deal anyway.
Yeah.
Not thinking he was going to make any money.
Exactly.
So
Okay.
did you not have any paperwork beforehand that he owns 25%?
Yeah, we had a partnership agreement.
So what if he would have come back and said that, okay, I own 25%? So he never did.
No.
Okay.
But I didn't go after him for Georgia and Alabama deals either. We had deals all over Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina,
So you had
North
to give
Carolina.
up. So you had to give up some portions.
I
of
gave
those.
up his deals down there. He gave up his deals in South Carolina and North Carolina.
Gentleman's agreement.
Just the gentleman's, I'll leave you alone, you leave me alone.
Okay. So you
That's
ended
what
up.
we had to do.
You ended up with 25%, and Vincent got 75%. You are
75.
still the general partner.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we both made out okay. We both made money. Yeah. And a year later, as things kept going, he called me. And this shows you the value of just not partnering, of relationship. A year later, he calls me and he says, hey, Patrick, I need to set up textile operations in the Western Hemisphere. Would you go to Panama and Costa Rica? He said, I know you know some people in Panama, so maybe that's a good place to start. So I went to Panama, and I had met a guy named Eduardo Ferrer with Morgan & Morgan Law Firm down there. And the Morgan & Morgan Law Firm are the people who started the country of Panama. And 5 presidents at that time, in the mid-'80s, had come out of that law firm. The guy they assigned me to was a guy named Eduardo Ferrer. The firm was owned by, originally, Eduardo Morgan Sr., who wrote the Constitution for Panama. He wrote the tax laws of Panama. Eduardo Morgan Jr. Then started the firm of Morgan & Morgan Law Firm. His brother, Juan David, joined him. Their nephew, in Spanish, Eduardo Ferrer Morgan. He is a Morgan through his mother's name, Morgan. Eduardo is now the senior partner of Morgan & Morgan. One of the finest fellows I ever met. Went to Notre Dame and Tulane. He and I hit it off from the first day. And whatever I wanted, he just led me to all the right people. So I found Vincent a building in the Cologne Free Zone. You guys know the Cologne Free Zone? It's the oldest city in the Western Hemisphere. It's at the mouth of the Panama Canal on the Atlantic side. It was an old U.S. Navy submarine base. It was built in blocks of 75,000 square feet each. 4 blocks. So roughly 300,000 square feet. We ended up taking 250,000 square feet of it. We took 75 to start. We added 25,000 to it. The country of Panama wanted us so bad that they let us have the building for nothing. Just fix it up. So my job was find it, fix it, and hire Vincent. As soon as he saw it, he said, "Pat, you got the right spot. I'm all in." He brought his brothers down. We had a big open house. We ended up hiring 2,200 Panamanians, biggest employment base in the whole country, in Clone-Free Zone, which had 35% unemployment. So while I'm doing that, he says, "Pat, are we ever going to buy land in Raleigh?" And I said, "Actually, I'm working on a site," and that became that site there, 175 acres in the Research Triangle Park. And so I went to Hong Kong, took my father in October of 1984. And I sat down with him and we put several deals together. When I sat down with Vincent and Jack Yang and Kimmy, Vincent says, "I'll take 3 units." I divided them up into 5 units. And Vincent said, "I'll take 3. Jack says, "I'll take 2. Done." Put another deal together. Vincent, "I'll take 3. Jack says, "I'll take 2. Done. 30 minutes, we said, "Let's go eat." I said, "Wow, my father turned to me and says,
easy.
my father said, "My God, what are you doing?"
Pat, will you go back to Colombia and tell about your entitlement process?
Sure. All these jobs in real estate become a nightmare. Somebody always wants a piece of you. Some states, some counties, some cities are worse than others. Where you are in Chapel Hill is very difficult. Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill over the years has gotten more difficult. Raleigh, Cary has gotten more difficult. Durham is very difficult. Depending on states, you might have a U.S. environmental issue, but each state has its own regs, and some regs are a lot more difficult than others. Stream buffers, air pollution, setback lines, how you're going to develop topography, etc. Active participants in the industry of extortion. And it is a cottage industry of its own. When you go to California, this is how they make a living. We have a monster project in the Central Valley of California. And all these wreak havoc over you and raise cost of doing business, which raises the cost of lot development, which raises the cost of a house or an office building or whatever it is. In Lexington County, I had a happening early on. It caused a lot of the problems from the delay from 1980 to 1983. You notice there was a gap there between interest rates at 9%, 22, 23%. During that 3 years, I was delayed due to an engineer down there in Columbia, Lexington County, actually. I got a phone call from one of my employees that worked in South Carolina and up along the border of North Carolina. These guys were in sales and helping with getting entitlements. I get a phone call one day and my employee says, "Pat, you need to be down here tomorrow." this engineer with Lexington County wants to see him. And I got on a plane. It used to be nonstop from here to Columbia on United. Walked in, met this guy, and didn't last 2 seconds. And he says, Mr. Gavaghan, I want to talk to you privately outside the building. So we walked down 3 steps, 3 sets of steps down to the first floor. Start walking around the building. He says, I'll be glad to help you with your entitlement. We can help you with your engineering, get your water in. He says, but I need some help. He says, for $10,000 in $100 bills, I'll be glad to process this thing as fast as you want to go. If you don't pay, it'll take you a very long time. And I said, well, here's my deal. I don't know whether you're the SPI. I don't know whether the FBI or you're a crook. So I'm a non-participant. I'm just going to wait it out. And he says, okay. Whatever, you're the boss. You do what you want, but you're not going to be getting any permits. And I didn't. I didn't until he was gone. Now, what would you do if you were in my position? Someday you'll be an entrepreneur. Someday you're going to be facing that question. This is the way it can get. You go up north to New York, Boston, Philadelphia, that is the way business is done. Typically here in the South, it has not been. There's only a couple places I've been that have done that to me. Here in Raleigh, it's not done that way. It's done that you better fix what I need. You better follow the owner's steps we're going to put you through. Or it will be really difficult. Michael's been through that.
We might have to build an extra road or widen a road for the city or add a new water line or upgrade infrastructure at our cost in order to get an approval to do our development.
Okay, Keystone Park. Let me tell you what they did to me. This would be important. I'm building this, and eventually we had as many as somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 employees. You would think that they'd bend over backwards to help a developer put in infrastructure and buildings to one employee, right?
That's tenants in the buildings that we're
Okay,
Right.
not
not
employees working on.
Companies, not working for us.
Right.
Companies that are going to take space.
Got it.
And develop products. Research and development type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
High-end stuff. Okay. So we're putting this road in here. And I'm opening, this building was first, second, third, and fourth. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's how we did it. Okay. So I'll give you an idea. Just give you one. We're getting ready to move IBM into this building here. Sorry, this building here, Tech 6. It's a 56,000 square foot building. So they said to me, you got to put a stoplight here at this corner. Well, it's $250,000. And if you don't do it immediately, we won't let IBM move in. So I go to IBM and see if I can get their help. They can't help. So I got to put a bond up for $250,000, put the light in.
not budgeted for.
Budgeted for. So I get them in the building. I'm building this building. I'm building this one for NetApp. Building this one at the same time for IBM. NetApp is getting ready to go in. And gotta widen that road from here to here, from here to here, and you can see the bows in the road. You can still see them. IBM comes in, and up here at Highway 54, I had put in 3 turn lanes to the right, turn lanes coming south, turn lanes coming south, turn lanes coming from the west to the east, going south. $400,000. Ultimately, they got me for $3.5 to $4 million for all the infrastructure over a mile from my property. So they did extort. It just wasn't personal in their pocket. They got me for roads, they got me for water, they got me for sewer, all those kind of things. So here they do it a little different than they did in South Carolina. But that was also 1981, 82. That's, 30-some years ago, 32, 33 years ago. So there may be a different formula down there too. But one way or the other, like in California, they got us and got us and got us. In California, they went after us for kit fox. Kit fox is about the size of this glass, and they're all over the state of California. They have signs through cities saying, kit fox, go turn here. Now, does the kit fox read? Does the kit fox know where to go? So, when we're getting ready to do kit fox, our environmental studies, some clown over here throws right here, right next to our property. He throws. We did this subdivision right here. Throw it right here on the edge of our property. He throws kit fox scat. Another word for shit.
Yeah.
in the yard. Okay. So that we would get hung up for another year. Some environmental guy, I know who it was, because he sued us for 3 years, cost us a lot of money, cost us $1,500,000 for environmental impact report. However, we lost the first debt round at $250,000. So it's $1,750,000 over kit fox and burrowing owl. But then next door, there's a cattle farm. So the cattle farm has what they call fairy shrimp. Fairy shrimp do not exist. It's a dead bug falling off a cattle's back. Promise you. When these guys hear this, they're going to flip. They're going to say, "You guys nuts." No, I'm not nuts. They didn't go through what I went through. Another way to get money. Because all that money, he gets a piece. Okay?
If I can just interrupt
Sure.
once.
Things add up to money, time, energy, waste.
Prevent growth.
And prevent good things from happening for people. But try to tell that to the government. See, I claim the government's in my way. The government has nothing good for me. The entitlement process, the government bureaucrats, don't think for a minute that the politicians run a thing. The bureaucrats run everything because they're not going to get fired. You can vote for whoever you want to vote for, but until they can throw out that bureaucrat, forget about it.
Yeah.
He's seeing that real quick.
It's true. People in planning offices or staff level or what?
They run the program. They make the rules.
So when you are planning any new development, do you take these things into consideration?
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
So what percentage do you budget?
Everything we've learned for 36 years comes out of that little brain.
Is there any percentage that you budget out for that?
We'll put in a contingency for every project, and it just depends on what type of project it is and what risk profile it has, I guess. There are some things that you know ahead of time have a risk that you can't account for. There are others that, you know, or some risks that you at least can define the range of costs for.
Right.
So we've got a project, for instance, that we're working on at NC State now that we've gone through such a long entitlement process, I guess you could call it an entitlement process, that we've worked out a lot of the risks from the scope of work concept, but there's always the unforeseen. You're going to have rock that you're not ready for when you go out and start digging for a building or something, and you have to, because you can't quantify it early on, you have to build in a contingency that takes up that risk. But I would guess if we went back to the original story from Colombia, I think is probably what we're focusing on. I don't know. We'll have to talk about that. But early on in your career, you don't have that 36 years.
You don't have any knowledge of what is going to slam you from behind or the side.
Right.
It's a knockout punch.
So I think the point that Pat's made to us before is, first of all, you got to have the right capital partners.
If you're ever going to start a business, make sure you have the right capital partner. And fortunately for me, I've got to be the luckiest guy in the world. I met a guy who, number one, we met and it was the right match, chemistry-wise, personality-wise. He's a wise guy. I'm a wise guy. We both happen to go to state. He's on one side of the world. I'm on the other. I needed money. He needed a relationship. It turned out to be more than a relationship, a real partnership, and a real deep meaning. And we've been investing together now 36 years. That's not easy. And I've built him 4 factories around the world: Mexico, Honduras, Dominican Republic, Panama. I run his import business. It grew from one deal to another deal to massive amounts of deals. And all of it now is based on trust. I just tell him, Vince and I would need $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, whatever it is. And he says, Pat, I'll send it right over. Actually, I handle a lot of his money here. I don't even send it back. He says, just put it in my account.
So is he
Great
still
capital.
based in Hong Kong?
He's based in Hong Kong.
So his motivation was trying to set up something in US.
Yeah, in the U.S. For his textile business.
Do you think early on when obviously he went to state, so he knew the potential of Raleigh or had a feeling for what you could do in the U.S. relative to China?
Right.
Were you his outlet? Were you somebody he trusted where he had an opportunity to invest money overseas? You think he was looking for that opportunity to put money into the U.S.?
He invested also with his brother-in-law in Seattle, who was an architect. And, a lot of people in academia think, well, architect, they got to be the guy. Well, I think Michael's learned a little different. The guys who know the money are us guys. We're the people that create the happening. The architects are people who draw the concept. I even like to take the concept a little further, as Michael has seen. I enjoy that as much as the architects. So I involve myself in what I like.
That's going to be Pat's second career. He'll start over as an architect.
I can't draw a thing. I can only tell them what I want. I can hardly write yet do that.
So, obviously you've talked about some of the negatives of starting your own business.
Sure.
Obviously, the positives have outweighed that.
For me.
Okay.
For me, I wouldn't trade this for anything in the world. But I can tell you, I've done 10 other startups outside of real estate. Every real estate deal is its own startup. Okay? And I have not failed at a real estate deal. Check around how many developers have gone bankrupt through 4 downturns in my 36 years. We're still alive and better than ever.
So
That's something to say. On the other hand, I've started exactly with 10 investments outside of my business where I've tried to help people get funded on entrepreneurial business. And I have failed on all 10.
So if you had to say luck plays into all of this thing?
It's timing, luck, aligning with the right people, making sure you know what you're investing in, right? The right investment with the right group.
Pat, can you talk a little more about mitigating risk is a little too general. We obviously, without Vincent there to pay off the 1.6,
I'd be bankrupt and going back to the Wolfpack Club working.
right? So that shows you that that's not. I mean, it was obviously a risk that was mitigated because you had the right capital partner. But maybe after that happened, did you take any steps towards? I mean, as you went on and created a business out of essentially playing bank with these builders, you took a bad spot and turned it into an opportunity. Is the way I see it, because instead of 20% interest rates bringing business to a halt, you said, okay, I can offer a different structure to these builders and let them keep building. And maybe it's not at the pace you wanted it to be, but it still allowed the project to maybe work out. After a while, it's going to take some time.
It was rather interesting because when we started selling the lots at 10, 12, 15%, the pace picked back up because the buyers of those lots who eventually wanted to put a home on there wanted to buy the lots from the owner so he could finance it right and get some equity in it. So therefore, when he went to go to Jim Walter Homes or one of the other Champion Homes and some others, that family had some ability to pay it.
So the actual buyer would come and get seller financing.
Yeah, because Jim Walter Homes and some of them were also doing owner financing.
Yeah.
Nobody could afford to go to the banks. It was impossible, 22, 23%.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a way that you mitigated risk with those buyers? Did you, I mean, I'm sure you did some level of credit check with those kind of people, you know.
Not really. If they put $1,000 down and they bailed out, that was $1,000 in my pocket.
That's true. You still had to.
I mean, I was at the point I needed anybody I could. There was a warm body to buy a lot. And a lot of them, I'll bet 25% of them dropped out, lost whatever they had in it, and would foreclose on them and take the lot back.
Got it.
Actually, that was a bonus.
But it was like
you get whatever money they put
whatever
in.
they put in.
But so because they couldn't do anything with that lot, they were almost putting down a deposit and, like, I don't know, buying it on layaway, more or less.
Exactly right, layaway.
So
Because
you
some
still
of them
controlled it.
some of them didn't put a house on there for 3 or 4 or 5 years or more. Some of them didn't do it for 20 years.
Right, but they didn't see that interest rate falling anytime soon, so they knew that they could get a good deal on the land from you,
That's right.
lock it in, and then maybe make a deal.
And in
with
some
someone
cases, if somebody was willing to pay, really put down a high dollar, and we had a $20,000 lot price, we'd give them $19,000. We're in the business of making deals and selling lots and selling them fast.
That's right.
Because at that point, we're also the bank. I hate to sound so cold, but those people who dropped out, they probably had very little chance of succeeding anyway. They wanted to try.
So what was the interest difference between you and the bank at that time?
23 versus 10 to 15.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. I think our high number, we may have had somebody for $200 or $300 down for at 17 or 18%, but most of it was 10% to 15, a couple at 16.
Okay.
But you know, when you're making 12% with no debt, you can pile up some money.
Yeah.
That's probably what about the average was, about 12, 12 and a half, 13. right in the middle. But you know, if somebody puts down $2,000, you got $18,000, and somebody finances it for 10 years at 12%, and you have no debt. And you take 320 lots like that, it add up. It got up to significant dollars.
Thinking about the market conditions around you while this is happening, was anything?
It was
happening?
us. No, it was us.
Nothing was happening.
Nobody was doing nobody had the ability to buy off the land.
Right.
I happen to have had the right financial partner that believed in Pat. And I think he had another alternative motive, because it wasn't even a year later, he has me going to Panama. So he's thinking, I don't want this guy to go out of business for $2 million, $2.5 million. I want him to go down to Panama for me.
Right. Well,
I want him to set up my business in Latin America.
We've been doing all these cases that are in the 70s and 80s, and everybody here, I think, realizes how much money that is at that time.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a fortune. Are you kidding me?
So
I had about $20 in my pocket.
basically, you bought the whole land for around $2 million, and then you financed it to people who are willing. But what was the alternative at that time? Do you remember what the treasury rates were if you had gone and invested this $2 million in something else? Would you have...
I don't even want to figure it out. I probably would have been better buying a building and having a building owned and just take the cash flow. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I can tell you, an empty building doesn't do you much good either.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to sell it fast.
You have to fill it fast.
So this was the cash
flow. You got to get
flow.
the income.
This was the cash flow you were relying on, the payments from, the interest payments from the...
Principal, they were all principal and interest. You take a 20-year, get a 12C calculator out, and we didn't have those then, and you take, call it $20,000 deal. Somebody puts down 10%, and they're financed $18,000. So we take $2,000, finance 18 at 12.5% for 10 years. See what the cash flow is. Then multiply that times 320 lots. You can pay off a lot of things, okay? We made some profit on that deal. Turned out okay.
So that was one of your unique selling points at that time.
It wasn't unique. It was the only way. It was the only way. Somebody had to pay off BB&T Bank and take possession of the land with no debt, or it was, forget about it. We had to become a bank ourselves.
I'm talking from the buyer's perspective. They were coming to you because you were giving this deal and others were not.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
I could give them a deed of trust on that 10% down and make them pay me.
Did you before this?
It was really. It was what I designed on an airplane. I was flying from Raleigh to Chicago, Chicago to Anchorage, Alaska. Anchorage, Alaska, I flew to Korea on a plane that 4 days before had gone down when the Russians shot down the U.S. airliner coming from Anchorage. I figured I was on the safest flight in the world. Went to Seoul, Korea. I spent a day in Seoul. I was on the cheap flights. I couldn't afford first class, okay? I was in the back of the plane, last seat, just hoping to God I'd get there. Spent the funniest day in Seoul, Korea, with the prettiest girls you ever saw in a mall in Seoul, and on to Hong Kong. Exhausted, 7 o'clock meeting with Vincent the next morning. I had to be really sharp. I designed all this on the plane flying over.
At what point did you realize, you know what, I don't want to be athletic director anymore? I mean, at some point you cross that threshold. You're like,
yeah, you don't want to really hear this part of it. I'd rather have that off the.
I can turn it off.
I would rather have you off. It's very counterintuitive. Michael's heard me say, when we're doing a residential subdivision, everybody else is slowing down. I said, okay, let's get the builders to speed up. If we have to put lots into the program, subordinate, make them build, go build. Because when nobody else is building and everything's slowing down, now's the time to go. Out here, 1993, market was in mess. 1992, another correction, down. I went to Hong Kong, told my guys I'd like to get started, put the road, water, sewer, let's get everything in, come up to here. And I got them to sign off to do the planning and get ready for a warehouse building. So we built that warehouse building. We turned around and went right back to here. When IBM took this, bam, we went right back to here with a different type of plan because nobody else was building anything. I said, okay, let's get this. We can always continue with this. And then we can figure out after this 4, let's build 4 of these and we'll come back here. That was the plan. So we go here, over to here. We got this up and going. We started getting some activity. Boom, started that building. Nobody else was doing anything. Duke Realty, Jim Little in my office, he had worked for Duke. He comes out one day, first time I ever met him, he said, what the hell are you doing out here? I said, we're going. Well, Duke Realty is big, much bigger than us. They're a international company. I'm just a little guy in the street. I had to continue beating them because they bought land down here a few miles called Perimeter Park.
Yeah.
Well, they were scared to do anything because I was going to go no matter what. So I was taking gambles, leasing up the buildings, while everybody else was sitting around saying, what the hell's he doing? I liked it.
Was it because it was
It's a gamble. It's a gamble. It's a gamble. I live in Las Vegas, right here in Raleigh.
But there's also a time lag in real estate.
Yeah.
So if you're,
Yeah, exactly.
it takes a while to get your stuff approved, to build it, and you could have 3 years before your idea and the first rent check. So if
That's
in
right.
corrections,
Good
sometimes you've got to start earlier than others in order to have something on the ground to rent.
Actually, we had started with the planning, land planning, as far back as 1991. Actually, starting back in 1985. In 1985, we worked with Research Triangle Foundation. People owned the 7,500 acres. A guy named Ned Huffman, the Department of Transportation downtown, NC State College of Engineering, Civil Engineering, Department of Civil Engineering, and my engineers planning all the roads, the interstate, and they called it the first toll road. 1985, they talked about a toll road. Hobson Road, which never has been finished. Davis Drive, which I did, extorted Davis Drive all the way up to 54.
Davis Drive was a dirt road when you bought that land, wasn't it?
Absolutely. This was dirt road from here down, and not much of a road from here over. Over here, we also had to widen this road here. Over at Miami Boulevard, we had to fix all 4 of those corners, put the stoplight up there. They got us big time. Every time I build a building, they get me for extortion. DOT.
So it was gambling, but it was also foresight.
Yeah. I mean, if you could see this project. When I went out to California in 1999, Vincent called me, 1998, he calls me and he says, hey, Pat, I need for you to do a development in California, near San Francisco. And as he explained the deal, it's a suburb of San Francisco. And I said, Vincent, I can't get there to California right now. We got Keystone Park. We've got 7 apartments in Raleigh. We got more coming online. We got subdivisions all over God's green earth. How in the world am I going to get to California? I'm running your import business. He says, you gotta go. I said, I can't. I'm not doing it. 1999, 1 year later, he calls me. He says, Pat, remember that deal in California? I said, yeah. He says, if you ever want any more money from me, you're going to California. So off I go. I went out there, and I swear to God, it was worse than San Pedro Sula, Honduras. It was worse than Merida, Mexico. It was awful. Awful. Anybody tells you California is the greatest place in the world? No. Believe me, I've been doing business out there 16 years. It's a joke. It's a Marxist joke. I come in off the highway here, Interstate 5. This was a broken down country farm road. This was a dirt road. Baldwin was a dirt road, just dust everywhere. They only get 2 or 3 or 4 inches of rain out here in the Central Valley a year. So he owned part of this. He owned land down here. I don't have that, this land here. And he owned 225 acres, and we bought more acres here. We owned this area, and we bought more here, more there, more here. And it was a city that if it had a quarter inch of rain a year, at one time, it would flood. And scat would come up in the middle of the town because the sewer system was totally worn out. Not enough water, not enough sewer. And I called him on the way home and I said, are you kidding me? This is the worst piece of dirt I've ever seen in my life. There's nothing here. I had my daughter Julie with me. And KB Homes was building over here. They had a little subdivision over here that grew. We owned this. They owned this tract there. And I went to the president of the California division. He was in town when I was there. And I never saw worse construction in my life. Promise you. $99,900 KB homes. Walls weren't plumbed. Walls cracking. It was god-awful. About the 3rd visit, I'm out there trying to figure out how I'm going to pull this deal off and do land planning. And I'm standing right here, right there, with my daughter and the guy who put Vincent into the deal to start with. A Chinese guy from his old days in Shanghai and Hong Kong. A guy named William Chang. He couldn't speak enough English for me to understand what he was saying, so I'd make him write everything. In fact, I made him write a fax to me as to where the location of this land was because I couldn't understand a word he said to me on the phone. So William and I and Julie are sitting there, and I said, this land here, this is residential, and we got to develop industrial here. And there's no industrial for 25 miles up the road to Tracy and Stockton. And Julie looks at me and she says, Dad, have you lost your mind? This is just a tomato field. 25 miles from nothing. There's 4,000 people live here. How are you going to pull? How are you going to do that? I said, I don't know. We're just going to do it anyway. We'll figure it out. So with Vincent's money, my gambling with his money, we won. Funny thing, it took us 3 years to get our entitlement. And I stood out here. I talked him into building these 3 buildings along with the city on spec. No debt, all cash. I got the city to put up $68 million along with the county and the state for roads, water, and sewer to improve the road off of the interstate coming down here. To pretty it up. They went along with me. You talk about doing a smooth job. I pulled a magic trick. Pulled the rabbit out of the hat and won. Okay? We put the road, water, sewer in. We put these 3 buildings up as a symbol. And they are good looking buildings. Really good looking. particularly for out there. I mean, most of the buildings in California are metal shitholes, rat holes. They didn't do landscaping. I do landscaping. We do really pretty first class work. Out there, they're third rate all the way. So we put these 3 buildings up right here. And by God, they came along. A German company came along, furniture company, a separator company that does separators for grapes, for Gallo wines. You know Gallo's the biggest in the world. They own over half of Europe's grapes, over half of California's grapes. Every winery you think has a name is really owned by Gallo. So we put this up, and wasn't a month or 2 later, we're back out in California, and we have 2 meetings in a week. This becomes our showroom. We have an office over here in this corner. The rest of the building's empty. But we have a little showroom, little conference room, and we bring in Long's Drugs from over near San Francisco, little suburb called Walnut Creek. And they have a warehouse, 400,000 square feet, up in Manteca, north between Stockton and Modesto. They need 800,000 square feet. We built them 800,000 square feet. How I talked them into that, don't ask me. I looked at the boss and I said, you know, up there at Tracy, up there at Stockton, you're going to pay a high fee, high land. Ours is $275 a foot. We've got $1 a foot fee, and you can have us looking after you. Up there, you're going to have nobody really looking after you. I hope you'll do business with us. He signed up. Same week, Kohl's department store shows up. Same week. And they take 400,000 square feet. So we built 2 buildings back to back. Holy shit. Now we're going. And I'm selling them on houses that we're building over here. This subdivision over here. They've gone up like bean sprouts. They were coming up so damn fast you can't believe it.
And he's playing the luck up too much. This happens to be right in the middle of California on I-5, so it's perfect for distribution warehouses.
Well, I don't know about perfect.
it's good.
I can't say that. Perfect is at the end of the Altamont, where the road comes down from Dublin, Pleasanton, Palo Alto, San Francisco.
But now
It's
Amazon's
a long
there.
ride. It's a
Oh.
long ride from Tracy, 23, 24 miles down the road. When I take you out there sometime, you're going to say, holy shit.
So why did you want commercial property on the one side and
Because I first of all, that much land is going to take a mix of uses. Number 2, without industrial, without business, without people being hired to go to work, this county and the city, we're not going to go along with all residential. So
And it drives the residential.
Yeah.
you can't see it on here, but down here at this corner, there's a Walmart, a Save Mart, the 2 corners over here. My original office out there when I first started was in McDonald's. Start my day at McDonald's. Had my sausage biscuit and a cup of coffee. Go start meeting people. I go out there for a week or 2 every month, try to get the thing going.
A lot of
So,
hustling.
You talk about a successful project. Now we turned a little tiny shithole of 9,000 people into first-class small-town America, and that's a lot of pride. I sincerely mean that. It is a point of pride for me to take a town that was in such disarray. We helped with the swimming pool. We helped them with their football stadium. It now has their Central Valley football championships, American football, as you know. We helped fund the brand new what do you call that, turf stadium.
Uh-huh.
We helped them with their stadium.
How many people are in Patterson now?
23,000.
It's not that. More than doubled.
Almost all because of us. Most of that industry is because of us. Most of those jobs are because of us. And it's first class. You'd be shocked. I know every time I go back there, I'm shocked at what we did.
Well, I keep harping back to these cases, but all of them kind of apply. We have these every case. We had to do 2 cases per week, and we have to, before we go to class, we have to write in: would we go forward? Would we not? Why? And some of them are they seem so far fetched, and you're like, there's just so many little things here that make this look like a bad idea, and then. Of course, at the end of the class, he reveals what happens, and we all feel stupid because we didn't choose to go forward. But you realize that some of them, and he also shows things that didn't turn out so good either. But sometimes you just have to take that leap of faith, I guess. And anyway, I think one other question I was thinking about too is that comes up in some other cases that we probably need to talk about is personal guarantees.
Yeah.
Outside of obviously having Vincent there to pay down that debt and that kind of thing. Did you have to take on any personal guarantees early in those projects, or did he, or how did y'all structure that?
He took on the personal debt, and sometimes that was difficult because he wasn't here. We had one deal with BB&T. The BB&T called the loan, called me in. I got a phone call. This was around 1989 or 90. We were doing Windermere. And for whatever reason, the president, who's still involved, Allison's retired, I guess, Kelly King. Again, I'm not sure I want that on there.
There can be in these deals without any way to plan for them,
So, I'm giving you guys a lot of history.
So one more thing, one small thing, I think. How did you come up with the name of your company?
Keystone?
Yeah.
I'm from Pennsylvania. And the name of the Tar Heel state is North Carolina, right? North Carolina's Tar Heel state.
Mm-hmm.
The state of Pennsylvania is called the Keystone State. So I named my company after my state, my home state. So I called Vincent late at night again, because it's again 12 hours. I tell him about this phone call. And I called this guy, and I still call him when I see him. I've seen him a few times. Dr. Death. I don't call him by his name, Dr. Death. You can imagine that.
I can
right?
see it. All of us turned.
So he calls me and he says, I called Vincent and told him about the story, and he says, Pat, I'll talk to Jack tonight, but here's what we're going to do. I want you to go to your lawyer, Jim Day, and sue them for $20 million. Just to piss them off. Punch them in the nose. Boom. Wow. Okay. He says, don't worry. Jack and I have you covered. We'll just pay them off when they get pissed off enough. Just pay them off. But I want to piss them off. Oh, shit. I said, okay, here we go. So I called the guy back the next morning. Hey, Dr. Death, here's your deal. Jim Day will be filing a lawsuit with you in the next day or two through Lacey Fresno for $20 million. Take it or leave it. We don't give a shit. Bye. Click. Oh, God. I'm sweating bullets, and I'm thinking, oh, boy, Vincent's having fun, and I'm sweating.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's why I tell you to do this. Yeah, this is the only way you learn. It's the only way you learn. Oh, God. So we go back and forth, and about 30 days later, he says, Pat, how you doing with him? He says, "Oh, I'm having fun too, Vincent." He says, "Let's just pay him off." I said, "Okay." So they wired money, paid the bank off, and we were the bank again. And then we started development. But you know, it's funny, when that happened, I got Reed a job at First Union, Bank of America, and Reed brings in all his guys at First Union. Bank of America shows up, and all the big boys wanted to say, "How can we do business with you?" Yeah. Instead of dealing with the little banks, all of a sudden the biggest of the bigs are showing up saying, "How do we do business with you?" And I needed them to do that kind of size project because those two banks financed $200 million. Okay? That's $200 million of loans over there. So I think you get the picture. The gambling, the risk, the dangers, it's just enormous. And it's so ingrained in me now. You know, when you have a gambler, you ever listen to the music, The Gambler?
Kenny Rogers.
Kenny Rogers.
Yeah.
It should be the theme song throughout every developer's office. Okay, and I know it's laughing, but it's serious. And just like an addict going to Vegas or going to Atlantic City or wherever they're going to gamble, Macau, you guys know Macau, I'm sure. You know where Macau is.
No.
Next to China. It's the biggest gambling center in the world now, bigger than Las Vegas.
In China?
Macau. It used to be Portuguese, now back to the Chinese. It's just 30 miles from Hong Kong. It gets in your blood. I'm now 70, and it's in my blood. And I think all of us in this business become addicted to the gamble, the risk, the rewards, the fight, because it's a battle. And as I've told Michael many times, every job in our business becomes, at some point, becomes a battle, then becomes a war. Once you start in the field, it's a war. The battle is the pre-development. It's the entitlement process. It's the buying the land, and you battle to get to a war. He wants to do this for his life.
I'm trying to learn how to avoid some of these really exciting stories. Honestly.
Well, good luck, man.
I want my story to be a lot more boring.
Good luck to you. Good luck to you. It won't happen.
I know.
So why did Vincent believe in you so much, giving you so much capital?
Because I'm a good guy. I don't know.
That's
Maybe
a lot of trust to
a lot of
giving
trust.
so much millions
A lot of
at that
trust.
point of time.
It is a lot of trust. And being the Guaylo, you know what the Guaylo is?
No.
The Guaylo is the foreign devil. Okay, you have foreign devils.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that name is in Indian, but in Chinese it's Guaylo. So not coming from the Chinese family, it's more difficult. But for whatever reason, he liked his little Irish friend. And I'm very pleased about that. He took to me, I took to him. Totally different cultures. Yet I believed in him, and he believed in me, and it's been a good partnership. Even today it's probably more solid than ever.
I think that's pretty much all.
Yeah, if y'all have got
questions
anything
are
else, ask away, or we can, if we think of things, I can send you emails or something, follow up.
Appreciate your time.
We took
Yeah,
a lot of your time.
Yeah, thank you so
I
much.
hope
Thanks
it
a lot.
I hope it helps.
It'll be great.